Hello guys, welcome back to Django Hub. Today we are going to cover Bootstrap components. This is a continuous session from the previous one. In our earlier session we learned how to integrate Django with Bootstrap and how to import the static files and JavaScripts of Bootstrap into Django project. So if you missed that episode, I already shared the link of that session in the description of this video. Kindly have a look into that before going to this session. Alright, as I said earlier, Bootstrap has a great grid system. So what is Bootstrap grid? Whenever you open any website, for instance, just open page, the complete layout of this page is divided into different sections. For instance, say that we have on the top a header. On the left side we have a left bar, on the right side we have right bar, on the down we have a footer, and in the body of the section we have different sections. So how we are going to manage this? So we can call this on the top header as a row. Even inside the row also we have different sections like logo section, and then search bar section, and then social media platform networks links, and then contact details. So we can divide this into different blocks. So we can call it as a rows and columns, like in our tablers. We know that each table has a row or column. Or for instance, take an Excel sheet, we have a column and a row. So even in the template in the web page also, to manage the blocks effectively and efficiently, we will divide the complete web page into different blocks, and each block has a rows and a columns. Alright, let's open our PyChart IDE and start working on grid. Okay, we already created a template home.html in our previous session. So open the template and let's start the development server. PyManage.py run server. Alright, the server is running successfully. Click on this. Click on this link. Great. In our template we haven't mentioned anything, just we mentioned h3. So it's nothing, right? So as I said earlier, so we are dividing this complete template or this complete web page into rows, into columns. As I said, the grid means the template and layout is divided into different rows. For instance, we are taking this as a top row, first row, and then second row, and then third row. In the first row, we are going to cover different sections. For example, a logo section, and then a search bar section, and then search bar button, and then social media, and then contact or a different block. And when it comes to the second row, we can divide into left sidebar and also right sidebar, and in the middle we have created a different column. And in the footer also we can divide this row into different columns. Say that I divided into different columns. Have you seen the lines in the red or is a row? This is the first row, this is second row, and this is third row. And inside this row we have a columns. Column 1, the green blocks are the columns. Column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, and column 5. Great. For example, this is 1, this is 2. Let's change the color. It's not looks appealing, right? And this is great, and this is 3, and this is 4, and this is 5. And in the second row, this is the first column, this is second column, and this is third column. And the same way in the footer, first column, second column, third column, and fourth column. Great. So now we understand. Let's create some blocks. Alright, now let's open our IDE, and inside our template home.html, remove this entry and let's start working with grid. So for that I'm going to create div class is equal to container. So what do you mean by container class? Actually, there are two types of class here we have to use. The container means whatever that's rendering on this page, the web page, all the blocks and sections of HTML all comes under inside the container. You can use single container or we can use n number of containers. There are two types here, the class properties, container and container fluid. Container means the content of the web page will be displayed in the center of this page. Center in the sense the left and right, the margins and paddings will be maintained automatically. When it comes to container fluid, this layout spans the entire width. It means that it will use the complete space available on the web page or the front end or the client view. Great, I will show you the both container and container fluid now, how it is going to work and visualize. So let's start with container. So inside the container we have to start using row. As I said, every content should be followed in this way. First row, inside the row we have different columns and each column we are going to use for different sections. So here I'm going to use column and I mentioned this is a first column. And here I'm using the class border. The reason why I use this class, if you display this content with a border, I mean this column with a border, we can understand better in the front end. But I'll explain about these borders and the other remaining components of the Bootstrap in upcoming sessions. So let's go back to the web page and refresh it. Have you seen now there is underline or a border for this complete block, or you can say this complete column. Alright, have you seen it took all the space available inside the container. So Bootstrap grid system is used for layout, especially responsive layouts. Understanding how it works is vital to understanding the Bootstrap. The grid is made up of groupings of rows and columns inside one or more containers. So that means that whenever you use a row and a column, it should be always inside the container. So when you mention these sections inside the container, then it can be managed effectively. And don't forget, whenever you use a column attribute, it must follow always inside a row. Great, now we created a container consists of one row. Inside the row we have a column, single column. Great, let's make another column. As you've seen, this column gives us one big column horizontally across the viewport. Have you seen? It took across the viewport. This is one column. So let's divide this into two columns. So go back to the IDE and simply mention div and one more class and column and border. We are using this border class to maintain the border for this column. So say that this is second column. Now go back to the view and refresh it. Have you seen it's divided into two sections, the first column and the second column. Great, let's do three columns. We have to enter one more section, div class is equal to column, and I'm giving the class here border to maintain the borders for this column, and this is third column. Refresh now. Great, now it's divided into three sections, first column, second column and third column. Have you seen the space on the left side, on the right side? That's because we use the class container here. As I said, whenever you use the class container, it will always display or render the content in the center of the page. That's why the left and the right margin and padding will be maintained automatically. For instance, if you load this page in a smaller screens or the wider screens, it still maintains these margins automatically and display the content in the center. Great. Let's make some content inside these blocks so that looks much appealing. Alright. Add some end content. For instance, I'm going to add some content here just to display better. Copy and let's place inside this, and second column as well. and also third column as well. Control Alt L so that it will reformat the code, which can be readable and appear nicely. Great. Now let's refresh your home page. Great. Now you have 3 columns. So before that we should know, let's make here some h3, and we are stating that example container. So if you use the container, the content will display in the center of the page in this way. So let's use container fluid. Just collapse this one and make. And you can always use the comments for the better understanding. You can mention this one as a container fluid. And let's create div and class is equal to container fluid. Same how we did in our previous sessions. Even for the container fluid also we have to follow the same format. That's mean div class is equal to row, and inside the row we will get div class is equal to column, and I'm using border to display the borders, and here I'm going to display the same content and place it here in the first column. And let's create another column, div, or before we create, let's check what the container fluid is doing. Refresh now. Have you seen the container fluid took all the space available in the web page or in the view? That's the difference between container and container fluid. Let's make some heading for it so that we can understand better. Let's make h3, and this is example container fluid. Refresh. Great. Have you seen the container fluid is taking all the space available in the web page? Great, but it still is a one column. That's why it took all the space available on this column. Let's create another column. Here, div class is equal to column and border class to maintain the class for this, to maintain the border for this column, and copy this content and paste it here, and let's refresh. Have you seen now there is 2 columns? In the same way we can create another column as well. Simply just copy this and paste it here. Let's refresh. Great. Have you seen now? So now we understand what is the difference between container and container fluid. Keep in mind that whenever you use a container, it will display the content on the center of the page, and the left and the right, the margins and paddings will be maintained automatically irrespective of the resolution or the screen size. And whenever you use the container fluid, it always takes the full space available on the screen. Great. So before going to the next sessions, we should know what are the rules of the grid. So these are the grid, right? The rules of the grid: columns must be the immediate child of your row. As I said earlier, the columns must be immediate child of the row. This is the row parent and column is the immediate child. Whenever you use even container also, row is a parent and column is the child. So columns must be immediate child of row. Rows are only used to contain columns, nothing else. Keep in mind, rows are only used to contain columns only. So inside our row we have columns. So inside the columns we can use any type of elements, paragraphs or image tags or anything, anchor tags, whatever it could be. Alright. So rows are only used to contain the columns, nothing else. Row should be placed inside a container. Have you seen? Inside a container we place the row. That means that row we should not place outside the container. The row must be always inside the container. These rules are very important. The rows and columns always work together and you should never have one without the other. Alright, so the best way to use the containers and rows and columns, first you have to use a container. Inside a container you have to use row. After the row the column will come, and inside the column you should use all your HTML elements. Here the container is the root element. Root, top level and outermost element of the Bootstrap grid. And here we have to mention one more thing. The container can be used to hold any elements and content. That means that inside the container you can use anything. It's not only row and columns. So these are the not immediate tags. You can use any tags. That's why I use H3. So the container can be used to hold any elements and content. It's not only used for the grid, rows and columns. So only here one principle we have to keep in mind, that the row and column has to come together. And the row must appear inside the container. And the container can contain any tags. Not only rows and columns, you can use any tags inside the container. These are the principles that which we have to remember. Great. Now think of the row as a group of columns, because inside the row we have a group of columns, right? This is the column 1, this is the column 2, and this is the column 3. That's what we see here. This is the row. This is the row, and inside the row we have 3 columns, column 1, column 2 and column 3. This is because columns inside the row are not always laid out horizontally across the viewport. This is the viewport. Sometimes we want the column layout to be horizontal, while other times we want the column layout vertically down the viewport. The concept of horizontal versus vertical layout is the essence of responsive design. The sole purpose of the row is to contain one or more columns. Remember that. So the sole purpose of the row to contain one or multiple columns. So what is the meaning of serving the responsive? Now we have the columns, 3 columns inside the first row under container and 3 columns inside the second row under container fluid. So let's minimize it. Have you seen now? So for example, when I am minimizing this, have you seen how it's responsive? It is adjusting automatically. So whenever you open this web page in your mobile device or tab or the wider screen, the columns and the rows will be maintained automatically. That's why it's called as an responsive. So we don't need to worry about the small screen devices or wider screen devices. So it will be managed automatically. That's why it is responsive. And one more point we have to mention here, don't put the content directly inside the row. I mean, inside the row, we should not use P or any content, P or image tag or anything. We should not do. This is not a best practice. So we should not keep anything immediately under the row tag. So we should use for this column. So inside the column, we can use any HTML elements as we required. So we can say that columns create horizontal divisions across the viewport. And the space between these columns, we will call it as a gutter. Alright, so there is another important concept here regarding column units. Actually, the classic Bootstrap grid has 12 column units. That means that the amount of space in this row can be calculated or can be counted as 12 units. So let's work how this is going to work. For instance, you want to use the space for one column is 60% of the space available in this row, and for the second column you want to use remaining 40%. So how we can achieve that? So instead of using 3 equal columns, you want to change the width. So let's go and do that. So we have 3 columns. So as I said, it has a 12 units. That means that the total space available in this row can be measured by 12 units. Great. So first I want to take the first one as col 6, and the remaining 2 I want to take 3 and 3. That means let's count 6, 3, 9, 9 plus 3, it's 12. So the first column will take 50% of available space inside the row, and the remaining 2 columns will take 25 and 25%. That is 50 plus 25 plus 20, 50, 100%. So inside the row, it will take 6 columns, and remaining 2 blocks will take 3 and 3 columns. So that is equals to 12. So let's refresh it. Have you seen that change now? So inside this row, 50% of the space took by the first column, and remaining 20% and 25% took by the remaining columns. So this one we can make vice versa as well. For example, I want to use this column as a 6 and these two columns I want it as a 3. Let's refresh. Have you seen now? So this is how you can change the dimensions of the blocks or the columns based on your requirement. Alright, the width of these columns can be managed as per your requirement, okay, but make sure that you should not exceed the call units length. So inside the row you have 12 call units, so we divided that into 3 different columns, and each column we given size as 3 plus 3 6 and 6 12, or we can give it as a 2. First column you want to take the column units, 2 column units, and next one is 2 column units, and remaining is 8 we're going to take in the third. So let's refresh and check. So we see now it's become much bigger, right? The third column took the more space. So this is how we can manage as per your requirement the size of the columns. Alright, let's do some complex. Suppose here I want a nested columns here, so inside this third column. Let's do that. So go to your third column here and let's create div and say that I'm creating a row here, and inside the row I'm creating 2 columns. Class is equal to call, and here I'm going to give some text, any text you can take, and paste. This is the first column, and I'm using border border. So inside the row I created 1 column, and this row exists inside this third column. So let's refresh and check. Have you seen now? So inside this third column I created another row, and this row consists a single column. To make it better appealing, let's create one more column here, that is div class is equal to column and border, and assign some text. Alright, let's assign this text and refresh. Have you seen now? So these are the nested columns which exist inside this third column. This is how it is going to work. And the same principles which we do, it will work for the container fluid as well. We can define this one into, now as of now it is 3 equal columns. We can change the dimensions as per your requirement. To understand better, let's make a heading here called nested columns, and let's keep one space here before the container fluid. That we can do here inside the container fluid. Let's make break and refresh now. Yes, it took some space. And here also just make a heading called nested columns. Go back to this section here, and here just mention h3 is nested columns, and now refresh. Have you seen? Let's make one break as well to make better appealing. Alright, have you seen now the break has been maintained? Great. So what's next? The auto layout columns have responsive types. There is some properties called SM, MD, LG, XL. For instance, when you mention this one, we are not mentioning any responsive properties. For instance, whenever you mention SM, that properties belongs to small screen, and MD means medium range screens, LG means large screens, XL means extra large screens. Now you know how to use columns to create horizontal layout, but wait, there is more. Let's talk about some fancier things columns can do. As you just saw above, columns can be different widths. Did you know that column width can change depending on the screen width? For instance, whenever you're expanding and collapsing, we don't feel much difference. That means that the column width is responsive automatically. But we can achieve column width can change depending on the screen width. For instance, now in a laptop or in a desktop, we can say that this is a medium size screen, that is MD. It's appeared like this. But if you open this web page in your mobile or small screen, you want to change the column width of the second column or the first column to a different width. That we can achieve. Let's do that example. So go back here and create one more container. Let's collapse this and collapse this as well, and let's create a comment. Let's create a comment and name it as column width change on depending on column width change depending on screen width. Alright, let's create a container. Div class is equal to container, and then mention div class is equal to row. Inside that we have div class is equal to column. Say that we given two columns, that is column 1 and column 2, and take some text and place here to display it better. Copy and paste here, as well as Ctrl Alt L to maintain the indent and format the code automatically, and Ctrl V. So we created two, and mention the border as well, border class or df border. So let's refresh this page and check the third one is appeared properly. Yes, the third container is appeared properly. So let's make some heading for this to understand better. So inside the container, I mentioned header, or we can mention same, this one. The header is, this is third container, container 3, and column width change depending on the screen width. Let's refresh. Alright, let's take a break, line break, to appear it much better, so we'll not get confused. Refresh. Alright, column width change depending on screen width. Great. So before we're doing anything, let's check the column width is changing or no. Let's minimize the screen and go back to scroll down. Have you seen the column width is not yet changed? Because when you see it on the big screen, we found as two equal columns. And when you minimize it also, though it is responsive, we have seen two equal columns. So how we can change the column width here? Alright, let's expand this and go back here, and let's here mention col 12, and here also let's mention col 12. So if you observe here carefully, if you mention col 12 and col 12, that means that you are using complete 12 units, 12 column units in that block. So how it is going to appear? Do you think these will appear in the same format like this? Let's refresh and see. Have you seen it's become vertically? The reason whenever you mention col is equal to 12, it's stating that it's taking the complete available column space. I mean the column units. Alright, let's start working on column width change depending on screen width. Return back to previous situation, that is col and col, and let's refresh the page. So it will display the two columns with equal width. So what we have to achieve, whenever I open this web page in mobile, I want to show these two columns should take full width, that is 12 units and 12 units. So whenever it's take 12 units, these both blocks or these both columns will appear vertically. So let's do that. So go back to your here and let's mention in medium screens I want 6 units, I mean 6 column units, 6 column units, and in small in small screens, that is in mobiles like that. I want this one to be 12. That is call SM12. Alright, so whenever you open this page on medium screens, these both will take 6 units and 6 units. That means that these two blocks will appear horizontally. But whenever you render this page in mobile, it will take 12 units and 12 units of the column. So these two columns will appear vertically. So let's go and check. Go back to the page and refresh. Have you seen it still shows as a call 6 and call 6. So that's why it's appeared horizontally, because we mentioned call MD is equal to 6. Let's minimize it. Have you seen now it's utilized the 12 units of the column. 12 units, 12 units. That's why it's rendered vertically. If you maximize, it's rendered horizontally. If you minimize, it's rendered vertically. This is how we can change the column width depending on the screen size. Here we have to mention one more thing. Always remember, larger breakpoints override smaller breakpoints. What is meant by larger breakpoints? Suppose this is column MD6 is larger than column SM, XM or XS. For example, XS is a small screen, extra small, we can say that. And also if we have larger than this, we can use call larger LG6. LG6. If you have larger, extra larger screens, we can mention call XL6. So what it is telling that this is for extra large screens, this is for large screens, this is for medium screens, and this one for small screens, and this one for extra small. So for small screen, extra small, you are telling that this block should take 12 units of the column. It means that the complete 12 units will take for these two type of screen sizes, and remaining medium screen, large screen and extra large screens, they has to take 6 units for this column. Alright, so here what I mentioned, larger breakpoints will override the smaller breakpoints. This is larger, right? XL, LG, MD and SM. So this will override this will override this, and this one will override this, like that. So what you mean by override here? For instance, whenever you open this web page on extra large screens, it will take this property and it will override this all. In the same way, if you open this website on the medium screen, it will take this property and it will override all other properties which are smaller than this. Alright. Or if you open on the small screen, it will override the other properties smaller than this. It means that the large property will always override the smaller. Alright. Great. So today we covered how to use the grid system in Bootstrap. If you have any queries, please drop me a message in the comment section. In our next session, we are going to cover the remaining components of the Bootstrap. And please stay connected by subscribing to this channel. And thank you for watching this video. Bye.